Hello, and welcome everyone to How to Support Human Authors and Artists in the Age of AI. This event is hosted by the Weeknight Writers Group, a social enterprise dedicated to providing affordable and accessible community supports for writers, and it is hosted in partnership with Renaissance Press, a wonderful Canadian publisher dedicated to sharing diverse voices. And they have enabled us to have live captions, which I should actually remember to turn on. It's been a while since I
It's all
did one
good.
of
We'll have a
these.
transcript anyway.
There we go. That looks like it's working. All right. So today we are here to talk about the evils of AI and how it is a serious threat to human creativity, but we also want to talk about how we can actually take action to prevent AI from overtaking human creativity entirely. And I'm really excited about our group of panelists today. So let's just get started with some introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you write, and why you wanted to be on this panel today. I'm going to start with my co-moderator, Jade.
I am Jade. I am a developmental editor and a writer, and with all the interesting developments AI has been having in media and technology recently, I've been interested in talking with other creatives and other people in the editing and publishing industry about how it's impacting them personally and creatively.
Awesome. Kat, do you want to go next?
Sure. Kat Gordon. I'm a speculative fiction author and a disability anthology co-editor. My latest book, Season 1, Iris and the Crew Tear Through Space, does have an episode with a point of view by a robot, but it was written by me, who has a meat brain. So it's all good. And I'm here today because, my gosh, hello, AI, it's everywhere. And I think these discussions are very important.
Awesome. Alex?
Hi, I am Alex Woodrow. I'm the editor-in-chief of Tenebrous Press. I'm also, less interestingly, a writer. I have a book out, but no, I'm chiefly here because in my role as an editor, I'm directly impacted by people using machine generation for writing, quote unquote writing, and by
Generating.
generating, and by the harm that comes to our authors and to our community. And we consider ourselves very active and happy to be part of this big community, and we see a lot of the impact that AI has on our writers and on our artists. And also we have a small network of fellow editors and press owners, which we are in contact with, and we all discuss these things together. And also I'm here because I'm a raving lunatic who is not afraid to say things that need saying.
Oh, you mean have an opinion?
Yes, yes. One might call it that, yes.
Same.
All right, Jen.
So I'm Jen, Valerie Storm, pen name, but I go by either. I'm a writer. I write young adultish fantasy. I also have books out. I'm here because as a creator, I've been seeing AI and how it impacts other writers and artists and musicians and all of them. And it's super disheartening to see it. And we see this discussion about how making art is like super easy and anybody can do it. And they're like, watch, let me show you. And then they get a computer to just make something for them. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. And it feels really disingenuous and it's sad. So I'm here to join the discussion and talk about that.
Awesome. And just to reiterate, I know my thing says Renaissance Press because we're using their Zoom, but I am Diana Gunn. I am the creator of the Weeknight Writers Group, and I really wanted to host this event because, quite frankly, I am pissed about publishers trying to use AI, corporations trying to replace people with AI in film, and I'm very concerned about human creativity and human existence, like all the things that make humanity worth, like make human life worth living being under threat by AI. So I feel like we did all sort of touch on this first question, but I think there's room to go into more depth. Our first question is, what is your most pressing concern about AI and its impact on creatives? And I think I'm going to go in reverse order this time and start with Jen.
Yeah. So when I saw this question, I thought about that nonsense that happened not too long ago where AI created a bunch of stories on Amazon and it took up all the bestseller spots or something like that. And I was just like, what the heck is happening? Like I was so irate. I just kind of sat there watching it happen and it it enraged me because that's a spot that we're all trying to get to. We're clamoring to get to those bestseller lists, even if we're not in the top 50, even if we're in the top 100, we're like super happy. It's like great. And these people created these bots that created stories, and those stories just spammed. I don't know exactly how it worked, but they had bots that read them or something like that so much that it generated interest. So they climbed up, and it was just like they cheated. Like, there's no other way to say it. They freaking cheated. And it makes me so mad because I don't care if I make it or not, but all of my friends are trying really hard to be more than just a Twitter writer. Like, they're trying to be famous and they're fighting against an impossible enemy. And it's so aggravating. I just, yeah. I,
Yeah. Alex?
So my most pressing concern, because obviously I do have 1,000 different concerns, but if we're talking most pressing, is that it's going to work. It is what they are trying to do is going to work. It's already working and it is going to continue to work. And I'm concerned that we are going to allow it to work. So we are going to allow AI to take over, to be commonly used, to be put on an equal spot with real creators. And the reason why I have this concern is not just pure paranoia or fear at all. I'm not afraid of AI because I've read so much of what people produce with it that I genuinely, like on an actual content level, I look at it and I'm like, no, there's nothing to fear. But the reason why I have this concern is that right now, or 3 years ago, before this was a problem, we already had so many unethical practices in publishing that we were struggling to control, and some that we were not addressing at all. There are already so many things happening where we let things slide because the person doing them is popular, or they have some sort of control, or people owe them for some reason, or a billion reasons. We already have a precedent of looking the other way when it benefits us, or even just when we're afraid, right? So that's why I'm worried that if the right, quote unquote, right, but if the right people decide to make this part of their usual habits, if this catches hold, like the fungus in my pear trees, once it catches hold in the leaves, it's going to be so much harder to eradicate than it would be to just stop it from catching hold right
But
now.
we just had a pandemic, people.
We're still having one.
Literally.
We learned
I think the
nothing.
metaphor would be right in front of people's faces, but no.
And so my main concern is that we are not going to hold people accountable enough, and especially the powerful people that we want to love. I'm afraid we're not going to hold them accountable enough to make a difference right now, which is why I am the raving person who is always talking about legislation. I'm here to discuss legislation because this needs to be legislated, because I have zero confidence in our as a community ability to stay on top of this, all of us. You know,
We are bad at
already
self-regulation. So bad.
It's always divided between, in any community, but especially in ours, a couple of people who are just not afraid to throw Molotovs and are just loud about everything and burn bridges left and right, and that's fine with them. And a couple of people who sort of stay in the middle, and then the vast majority who just wait to see how this turns out. And in this instance, I'm afraid that if we wait to see how it turns out, the answer is bad, which is why I keep talking about legislation being the most important thing. Yeah, that's my main concern. I'm afraid we can't handle it by ourselves, and we are going to need authority in this.
Well said. Kat?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with what's been said so far. My thoughts were that, of course, it's going to push us to the margins, which was already discussed. And it's hard enough when you're an indie or a small press author. You are already kind of living on the fringes, trying to get your work out there, producing stories that aren't really mainstream in the first place, and not having the big kind of publishing budgets to be at the front of a store in that. So we've had it's hard to get our work out enough as it is. And if AI takes over, which is a legitimate fear, we're going to be pushed to the margins even further. The other thing too is I feel substandard writing will become the norm, and it could possibly discourage future authors from even bothering to be creative at all. And I mean, you know, we spoke about the pandemic just now. What got us, a lot of us, through the pandemic? It was writing. It was writing that came in the form of books, came in the form of TV shows, other things we streamed.
Book sales went up over the pandemic.
Absolutely.
It was crazy.
That nurtured us, right? So we need creatives. But I want to point out something else, though, because we talk about creatives, which is absolutely important. But what's also important are journalists, either like big time journalists or small journalists. I don't know if you, it was in the Verge this week about how Microsoft is using AI to generate articles. And I live in Ottawa, and this was about my city. And it was a tourist article. And the number 3 place to visit was the Ottawa Food Bank. And, you know, we all know that the price of groceries, et cetera, blah, is going up. A lot of people are choosing, do I eat? Do I pay rent? People are relying on food banks. And that's absolutely tasteless. And even though it said in the in Verge's article that Microsoft said that they have these algorithms, but they vet them with human brains.
Sure they do.
Something got missed.
Who vetted that one?
And so what I'm saying is, my belief is that, hey, if you have, I don't know how many AI articles this one editor whatnot has to vet, but oversight wouldn't be as dire if you had a human author who would check all the places you can eat and the places you could visit in Ottawa. There would be much less of a risk of posting something like that. So I have the link to the article. I'll shove it in the chat just for information's sake. So yeah, lots of stuff there, right? Lots of things that we have to consider for creatives and even for nonfiction journalistic folks as well.
Absolutely. Is it okay if I just jump in super quick with one thought here, because it ties into the nonfiction topic?
By all means.
I just yesterday saw people have started talking about this, and it's incredibly dangerous, and made me realize that absolutely nonfiction might even be a far more dangerous place for this to happen than fiction, as much as fiction affects us personally. But I just saw people starting to discuss how they are finding books on foraging and mushrooms that have been written by AI, which is monumentally dangerous, and they are for sale on Amazon right now. And there are no tools to address this as quickly as it should be addressed. Some of these copies, even if they haven't sold much, some of these copies have already been printed. And once a book is printed, it could be out there forever.
You don't know where it goes
Yeah.
from there.
That is so terrifying. It is the last place where there should have been any sort of room for, interpretation, is whether or not certain berries are safe to forage.
Yeah, and
Completely
I've
agree.
even seen on nonfiction stuff related to that. I've seen authors saying that some of these AI generators are actually creating Amazon accounts that use the same name, like an identical name to an actual subject matter expert, or something that is
Or
just
like
a very
off by a
slight
letter.
misspelling of a
Yep.
person's name so that they can look like they came from a real expert, which is
Yep.
absolutely terrifying. And I actually am a nonfiction writer for like my bread and butter, and I write mostly about how to build websites, and it's not going to kill anyone if those facts are incorrect. But it is
It's
still
also not
very,
going to build them a website, is it?
yeah,
It's just
exactly.
not.
It's still very concerning. I have
Yeah.
seen a lot of freelancers saying that, they've been fired for AI, or they've been told that instead of writing, they'll be hired to work to edit AI articles for like abysmally low rates, considering the level of editing that is needed on these tools, because these tools are not great. And I think it's very telling that I work for technology sites, and while we're writing articles about AI, they're still paying writers. I think that really says a lot about the gap between AI and human writing still. And I do think that will continue to be a thing for a while, but the fact of the matter is at some point that gap is going to narrow significantly. And possibly, I don't think it'll ever like fully disappear, but especially with writing that is less about creativity, that gap is going to lessen, and it's going to pose real danger to A, the people who are working, but also B, the people who are reading, if it looks like the same high quality, but the facts are wrong.
And this is another thing that I've seen actually, like not just nonfiction generated by AI that is potentially dangerous and potentially not fact checked, but I've actually seen ads where people are selling access to certain AI and telling people this is a business model. Just use this AI to generate some stuff with very minimal prompts, none of which are checked for anything. And then like encouraging people to publish these on digital platforms for free or for very cheaply and build a brand, quote unquote, this way. Which, and the problem
Yep.
with this too, AI has, it doesn't need to sleep like a human. It doesn't need to eat or anything. So it can just generate iterations and copies forever. And one of the dangers, especially as a developmental editor, that I'm seeing, not that it will replace my job, because quite honestly, I haven't seen anything that's able to do the complex sets of analysis that I can do, but
Yeah.
definitely promote itself better, make
Oh,
other
yes,
people think it's
absolutely.
easier and cheaper and that they can get this done some other way.
Yeah.
That's a danger. So it's taking away from business that I can have. But on a higher level, as a neurodivergent person, one of the things that I've just recently been noticing about it is that I don't like the way AI encourages people to skip steps in learning, in doing their own verification, in critical thinking. And while on one hand, it can be beneficial to have a place where you can offload some of the things you need to remember, I think in the long term, it's detrimental to developing brains, to creative people, to have these easy, accessible, and not high quality shortcuts to doing things or to learning things. It ends up with a bunch of people with a skill set they think is higher than it actually is, and pulls down our entire ability to make art at a certain level just by
Absolutely.
drowning it with
Yeah.
poor quality copies.
Yeah.
And then
Um,
overloading systems like Amazon so that it's
So it's hard to
increasingly
use
difficult
for
to
legitimate
find.
people to get in
Yeah.
or find legitimate stuff. And this kind of leads into our next question, which is, do you believe there is any ethical use of AI, and where do you believe we should be drawing ethical lines about the creation and use of AI? I think this would lead into sort of like where we want to draw those boundaries. What should it be allowed to do and not do within your area of expertise? And anyone want to go first for this one? Kat? I think you're
And
muted.
unmute. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. I feel there could if we use our powers for good and not for evil. I would like to see AI used more for accessibility. Now, I guess the way, I don't really know if this is AI, it's AI adjacent, but for years I have been using read aloud features
I
while
believe that counts as AI.
yeah, I've been using read aloud features when I write, and sometimes when I have to read and review things, because I am autistic, and sometimes I have problems with visual stuff, and sometimes I have problems with audio stuff. So using two together really helps. I've done transcripts for podcasts, and I've been using Otter AI for
Same.
that.
Yep.
It just kind of gets the ball rolling. I have to go, and I still have to listen.
It's
and
helpful
just
for
correct.
task initiation. It really is.
Really does. One thing, when Chat GBT came out, now I have never used that, so that's just let me just say I don't know it, but I was on Mastodon, and someone had said that a friend of theirs who has dyslexia was using some feature of it to help them write. I don't know if it would help point out, hey, did you want to use this word or da da da? Like, so it was, I wish I would have attended their panel.
Or even voice to text to have the spelling show up properly.
Yeah, I don't know how it worked for them. I regret I didn't attend their panel, but I thought that was really interesting. I know there are tools like Grammarly and stuff, but lately the topic has been coming up about read the small print. When they say we use our, when we
As a
use your
training model.
content for a training thing, we need to know what that means.
Yes.
Yeah. But I would like to see it more for accessibility, because I mean, like I said, I'm autistic, I'm disabled, and I have an advocacy in that area, and I think AI could be really cool in those ways. So that's
as a
my
fellow
main focus.
ADHDer, I agree with your points, and I think they are very important to consider. Anyone else? I think
Yeah, I
Alex,
would
you'd
actually
add.
like to jump in on the
Okay.
specifically because it relates to the accessibility conversation. Actually, Zoom said they were going to use all of our data. They've actually walked this back.
Kind of had to.
They kind of had to, because what they were doing was actually legally an overreach. But here's the thing. If Zoom said, we are specifically using your data, just your audio data, to improve our live captioning, if that was very clearly laid out and that was the only way that they intended to use my
and they
audio,
give you a checkbox or an opt-out,
and they gave me an opt-out, I would actually be okay with that, because yeah, I would love to see better live captioning. What the concern was that they were going to take and use all of our data, potentially in some of the very same sketchy ways that the film studios are trying to use background actors' likenesses.
like
And
scanning
that was
people's,
yeah, like using your face, using like you, and
I
recreating
wouldn't want my
in
video
other
used.
spaces. Yeah, I don't want my video used. I don't want you to be using my image elsewhere. But if you told me you were very specifically going to use my audio to help you improve live captions for accessibility, that I would be okay with. And the biggest issue with a lot of AI right now is that there's no transparency about how it's trained. There's no opt-out. A lot of it is done by scraping stuff directly, like stolen information from
It's because the use is being
web.
controlled by the corporations, and there's no legal regulations.
Yeah, which
right
probably
now.
leads well into what Alex wanted to say.
Go
Misregulation over
ahead.
here.
I see that grin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do believe that there are totally tons of ethical ways to use AI, but it has to start with a couple of foundations. And I think of them as the same sort of foundations as like a piece of furniture, right? If I'm buying a wooden table, first of all, it has to be ethically sourced, which means the AI has to have been created by, trained on, everybody involved in the creation of that product has to have agreed to be part of it. So let's say we've got that absolutely covered. Then the next part is that the way it's used after it's been ethically created, which is already like complicated, and that's already not happening now. Um, oh, it has to disclose where and how it's been trained, because we as end users have to be able to agree with or not agree with how it
It should be able
selected
to
its.
cite its own sources.
Absolutely. Also, because if it doesn't need to cite its own sources, at that point, we're just supposed to go on blind trust that it just happens to have
And
been
what if those
ethically
sources
sourced.
become
Like that's
invalid
not
at some
happened.
point and we want to replace them? That's
Absolutely.
happened in history.
And then on the user side, I absolutely see great uses for it, but they're not going to be generative. For me, I think AI that's, you can ask it to go to Google and pull all the existing articles on a specific topic and put them in a
Collating.
specific order for you, right? And only take things that already exist and show you where that information is. Doesn't that sound like a magical tool that we could all use?
I do
And
data management and I love it for that.
and and
It's
and, and it
amazing.
wouldn't cause any harm, and it wouldn't, again, if it was ethically sourced and all of that. I think there are tons of uses, and also in other fields, in engineering, in medical fields, I feel like
Even
those
legal, to keep
professionals
track
are
of documents and case
right.
numbers. And
Exactly, in the legal field, those professionals have to be the ones who define for themselves what their best ethical use is, because their answer might differ to ours as creatives. But I feel like in the creative field, ethical use has to stop right before generation. I don't believe that there is any point where generating something new can possibly be fully ethical. There's going to be side effects, there's going to be ramifications that people haven't considered. And one thing
just
that
to
I use
clarify,
in
you mean
Go ahead.
not like a transcription where it's generating a new medium from something that exists. You mean something
No, no,
like
no,
an
not like that.
original
No,
story.
I mean generating entirely new stories or entirely new art or anything like that. Yes, not transferring from one medium to the other. Oh, if I could agree to have all of my voice data given for closed captioning, I would just give them my microphone all day long. Like that's such a fantastic use. Is it
It would
going to make
eliminate all
people?
of the weird
Oh,
translations from like accents and
oh
great.
yes. They can just have it on all the time. They can hear me cussing in Italian. I don't care. Um, And one example I like to use as to why generation of new ideas specifically can never be given over to AI is how something can be technically correct, but practically very, very wrong. It's because I keep in contact with my old job, which was to write grants for the European Union. So what we did was we would write projects that would propose new things in education, right? And we would get money from the EU or not get money depending on how good our projects were. And my main field was education in prisons. And it's a fantastic field, and they've struggled with the exact same issues that we have, the same grifters who are like, use AI to write better projects, modeled on the projects that got approved, exactly the same situation. And something that very recently happened is that somebody brought a project to them that was written by AI, where in one of the core tenants, but it was just this much text in, like, imagine 800 pages of project. So you had to look for it. But one of the core tenets of that was that the machine would be generating a rehabilitation plan for each individual inmate based on, I can already see some of your faces. Yes, that based on the data that was input about that specific inmate, and then the prison would have to follow that plan.
Does that get
And
approved at any point before?
it hasn't, it wasn't approved, and
Oh,
it
thank
was a
goodness.
massive alarm bell. And that's the point where the EU kind of realized how serious this was. And basically the week after that,
Is that when
they
all the
passed
data
a
things
new
went into place?
they passed a new rule now that basically says that if anybody submits a project that's generated in any part by AI, they obviously get rejected. They have a 3-year ban from ever submitting again. So that's already most
That's a
businesses
nice
would collapse.
disincentive.
They were very serious about
You
it
can't
because
even submit.
that's the moment when they went, oh, because if you looked at just raw data, if you look at the technical aspect, it is correct. You know, if you correlate the logic and the input and the output, there was
But
nothing in that that was technically wrong. But if you think of it in a human sense of applying that to reality, it is full on dystopia. Like it is beyond belief what that could have ended up being. So that's why I feel like even in technical fields, probably the line is still going to stop before generation and
I
stop
mean,
at
have you noticed how many
research
developers don't
assistants.
actually own so much tech?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's my ethical line. Research assistance, accessibility, all of that, anything short of generation.
Jen?
Wow. Okay. So you guys covered pretty much everything. No, I loved hearing about the accessibility because that was kind of where my brain went was I don't and stopping before generation because and hurting creatives because I think that's where AI becomes a problem is when it starts taking from other people and hurting them. It's it's taking it's taking people's work, it's taking their opportunities, it's doing all this stuff and that's what pisses us off, you know. But so I'm a teacher and we have to make lesson plans. And when I was making a lesson plan for something, one of my teacher goes, "Hey, how about you use Chat GPT? You can type it in just like this, and it'll make you an entire lesson plan." And I was like,
Oh, so our kids are going to be educated by ChatGPT now?
right. So I was like, I hate AI, but I'm curious. So I did type in something and I got a lesson
Now
plan
I'm
and
curious.
I was curious. I'm a curious cat. So I threw it in there and you know, I think that's where we really need to have that human element to it because I liked what the lesson plans it gives me, but I really need to edit it and make it like fit this thing that I'm doing because it's never going to be perfectly correct. It's always it's grabbing information just
This
from
is what I
everywhere.
found too. We're saying generation, but I honestly don't think it's actually generating the same way
Yeah.
humans are. It's collating. It's collating very originally because it can pull from a wider data source than we can keep in our heads
Yeah.
at once, but
Right.
that doesn't make it actually original.
No, it's pulling from all these thousands and thousands of sources and it's putting it in one place for us,
It's good
which is
pastiche.
great. But yeah, it's great. It's useful for when we don't have time or when we're lazy. That's
Fantastic fan fiction.
fantastic. But yeah, yeah. But it's like if you're hurting somebody with it, if you're taking somebody's work, if you're doing something illegal, if you're putting forth, my brother just told me about a lawyer that used ChatGPT to make a court case, and apparently ChatGPT made all this information up, and then they got in really big trouble. And it's like, yeah, dude, you
Well,
should have
yeah.
checked it. You should have checked the stuff first. So I feel like we need the human element. I think it
Don't
could
get
be
someone to
ethical.
do your homework and not look at it before handing it in.
Right. You're gonna get a big fat zero, or you're gonna get fired or arrested, at the far end. Um, I feel like we just need that human element. It could be ethical, but we definitely need that human sense to it to double check it all the time because it's pulling from so much stuff. It could never be 100% correct without that help.
Absolutely. I think that really hits the nail on the head is, the human element is still necessary. And to me, that says why even bother? When you're still going to have to do almost as much work, and in some cases more work if stuff is really like factually wrong.
Yeah, I
And
really think they should concentrate on making better collators instead of trying to generate. Like,
yeah,
just work on being better data organizers. That's great. Humans can't organize the billions of terabytes of data that an AI is capable of. But like with that available, we can generate our own stuff better.
exactly. And I feel like honestly we could talk about this one question for
Rest of
the
the night.
whole next hour. But we should move on. We want to get into some more of the practical stuff. And I wanted to ask, what can authors do to protect their work from being stolen for AI use? Does anyone want to go first? Alex?
So I'm actually going to be playing devil's advocate on this one and answer the contrary of this question, because for me, I think the answer is almost nothing directly. And I want to warn people to be very careful in taking, and again, I mean direct action, as in, um, be very careful if you are somebody who is posting very loudly and repeatedly about this on social media, demanding your work to be taken off of certain places publicly, generally talking about this. And, you would think, oh, it's a good thing if I just make it very public that I'm against it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Some people absolutely do. I'm just saying be very careful and aware, because you are going to be targeted by a very large category of people, and I mean more people than you are imagining,
Know if this
however
is the
much you
hill
imagine.
you want to die on.
Yeah, and they have nothing to lose, and they have resources, and you are putting yourself at risk of being harassed. And I'm talking home address level of harassment,
Like full
family
on
attack
doxed.
level of harassment. Absolutely, it is very serious. So, irrespective to talking about it very publicly, just be super sure that you are doing it from a very safe position. And just heads up, most of us who are on social media are not. We are none of us keeping as safe as we should be keeping. So, just my advice would be don't do that part. If we're talking about, you know, if we're talking about, um, being or investing in anti-AI detection software, or investing in DRM heavily. All of that stuff also has negative parts to it. There's bad sides to everything you could be doing. And most importantly, it isn't your job as a creator primarily to be fighting this directly with your own fists, because there's a limit to how much you personally by yourself can impact. Having said that, there are things that people can do, and I think that those things are always going to fall under the category of lending your strength and assisting the organizations that are in a better position to be doing this, that are doing it from a position of safety and resources.
With the
So things
community
like,
alongside.
there are both US and European Union organizations that I know of that are fighting for legislation, that are investing money in lawyers. I do believe everybody should research by themselves to find, if they want to donate money, to find the right places that they want to donate money to. But that's one thing. Donating money, donating your time, volunteering for those organizations, and following them, and following their lead, I think is safer and more likely to be more effective than trying to do anything by yourself, which is just so incredibly difficult as just one lone author shouting into the void. I just want people to stay really, really safe, because this is so serious and people have gotten into such bad trouble over this.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty serious horror stories recently about this. I've seen a lot of people who've been very vocal about AI say that suddenly their phone is flooded with harassment and calls related to this. And while some of it doesn't seem like directly related, the timing of it happening, like, within 24 hours of them having a post about AI that goes viral, it seems pretty clear cut. So this is definitely a thing to
Absolutely.
be concerned about. And most of us writers are poor folks. We don't have money
Yes.
for, bodyguards and security systems and things to help us really deal with this. And we all know how great the police are at dealing with internet harassment. So,
Yes. Oh, and people's jobs have been threatened and seriously damaged. And of course, it would be great to live in a world where your employer would not dump you over anything as unfounded as 100 people calling to complain about you all of a sudden, and you could just tell them what's happening. But we don't live in that reality right now. You will easily end up getting dumped for something like that. Obviously not everybody, but I would be very careful on that. And the issue is, like you said, a lot of creatives who are suffering under this, they're not necessarily the wealthiest people with infinite time and resources. Whereas a lot of people doing the harassing on this topic are tech pros who do have more wealth and resources. So yeah,
They can even build AI to do the harassing for them,
yeah, right.
which is just, it seems so
Or
unfair.
or invest money in somebody else building that AI for them. You
Exactly.
know, grossly underpaying somebody in Sri Lanka to build that AI for them, which is what we found out has been happening. So yeah.
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 Jen, I saw you also wanted to speak to this. I saw your hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, I lost my mute button. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I think Alex really covered a lot of the things that I would have considered things that we could do to help. When I saw this question, I thought, so I'm mostly on Twitter, and we have our little writing community, and we all share snippets and ideas and thoughts and pictures and whatever. And when AI started to become a problem, it was kind of like, okay, is AI going to steal our ideas, our characters, our plots, our stories? And is it going to repurpose them and make them into a more popular book because of the algorithm that they can create on their own? Um, so it was kind of like, well, how could we on Twitter as writers and artists protect our own stuff? And it came down to like, well, we need to change the way that we're sharing our things. Like it kind of sucks that we have to consider maybe we can't always share so much, or we have to do it in a certain way, and it limits how we can connect with our fellow creators.
mhm.
And it
Kind
really
of makes us
sucks.
put things behind Patreon paywalls, or
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, or
which
like
I
I'll
dislike
use
doing, because then it's like, then you have to pay to be a fan.
right,
Then
and
it,
that's
yeah,
so bad. And then artists will use watermarks, which can really help, but then I don't know, some people don't like that either. And
some people are good enough to edit them off with
right.
some kind of
Ex
software.
yeah, they can even take off pieces of the art around the watermark, and there's always ways around it. And it seems really hopeless right now. But I think we can do it. I think we just have to find those little niches, and a lot of the stuff that Alex was talking about was good. We need to work together is kind of my thought process. We need to work together as a writing community, as an artist community, you know, and kind
Yeah.
of protect each other.
The big difficulty with your data on Twitter when you're talking about your book or anything like that on any social media being scraped is that even if you do refrain from doing that, which is really, really hard, once something is published, we've just seen that like 2 weeks ago with the whole prosecraft Shakespeare nonsense. Once your book is published or your story or whatever it is published, then there is absolutely no stopping. There is no paywall that will stop them from scraping it. I have no idea because also my book and a bunch of like everybody's book ended up on those websites. We don't even know whether they initially paid for a copy or managed just because I highly doubt that there were thousands of books. If they had at least bought a copy, I'd have been happy. Or they just
Right?
managed to find a way around that because of course piracy always finds a way around it. And in this specific case, piracy plus using it for AI. So all of that published material was scraped. And then at that point, it makes me wonder, would it actually have made a difference if I'd shared snippets the month before on Twitter, since it anyway, and we're talking like the day after something is published, it has already been used to teach a machine something. It takes them instants to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure
It's
they
not like
have
we're even,
a separate AI program to find pirated copies of your stuff.
yeah.
And I mean, it would be one thing if they were paying for a copy of each thing in order to like give it to the AI to train it, but it's like, no, let's just make one library and train every AI off this
Yeah.
same library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kat, I see you've unmuted yourself.
I did. Again, that's an autism thing. I never know if I'm just going to mutter things out loud. So for respect for everybody else, I just thought, keep it safe. Yeah. So my short answer is I have no idea. You know, because there's so many things I could say. I could say, well, because I was writing my notes before I realized Zoom walked a couple of things back. I used to use Zoom with a critique group. So we're reading our first draft, like even less than first draft, just first thoughts down. And the people I'm in critique group with live in different cities from me. So there's that. And then there's, I love to say, hey, my book's coming out, da, da, da. Here's the cover, here's the da. I mean, most of us do, right? But then you also have the thing with Jane Friedman that had come out, right? She was an author, pretty famous author, and then some AI thing published a whole bunch of things on Amazon. And I have an article from CNN about that. So I guess she didn't want to speak out, but then felt she had to. So I don't know what risk that is to her. So I don't really know what to do. I could say never say anything online, but as Alex said, once your book is published, they could do whatever they want.
Well,
with
that's
it,
just the
so
thing. If they're
here
taking
nor
stuff
there.
from Zoom, it doesn't even have to be published. You could be on a Zoom call with like your friend or your critique group, and that stuff could somehow get out.
Exactly. So
Like, how do you keep things private anymore?
Well, yeah. And so I guess I don't know, I meet someone in an underground garage and have my critique
Yes,
group
now
there,
we have to do clandestine book development.
kind of like those film noir things.
I mean, that would be
We're
fun.
gonna be passing drafts in brown paper bags
Exactly,
soon.
right?
Oh
Think
God,
about
yes.
it. And I feel I have a short story coming on already with this.
Somebody write this.
Somebody write this, but and we're going to be talking about this a little later, but I think there are organizations here, even in Canada, that care a lot about copyright as well.
Yeah.
So it is better to be affiliated with an organization and to support what they do. And you can bring to them, hey, by the way, this happened to me with my book, my short story, my cover art. Right.
Class action. Join a class action.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is much better, instead of being the lone warrior, to affiliate with an organization that has the government's
Absolutely.
ears as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing
and
is, with copyright, it's only defensible as long as you are legally able to defend it. Like, you can put out something with a copyright, but if you don't have the resources, the money, the background, the lawyers to support that, you can't win the copyright case. So it almost forces people to band together. Otherwise, copyright by itself is worthless.
Yeah.
What does it mean anymore?
Absolutely. And I would like to say, if you like, this is one place where if you're able to become part of something like the Science Fiction Writers of
Authors
America
Guild
or
associations.
Horror Writers of America. Horror Writers of America actually just, or no, well, it was SFWA. They actually just changed their
Membership criteria?
yeah, their eligibility criteria. A
Oh,
lot
nice.
of people who wouldn't have been eligible 6 months ago are eligible now. I'm even eligible now.
Perfect. Sign
Because
up.
they've really changed it a lot. So definitely check that out. Now, I don't know how extensive the availability of legal help is, but I do know that they can help you to some extent with getting legal help
Being
on these
part of the
things.
group is, at least you'll get like the notices and stuff. You'll know if the group is doing something as an action.
Yeah.
Being part of these mailing lists. Actually, all of this whole conversation is leading right into our next question.
Hold on. I wasn't actually done. I do also want to add, Megan pointed out something that I was going to mention, which is an anti-AI tool called Glaze, which you can put on your artwork, or if you wanted to do like a screenshot of your writing, you could potentially do that and put glaze on it. I'm not really sure how it works, but it does seem to be more effective than a watermark. I was actually in the
Is that the
process
one
of
where it
grabbing a link, and then
buzzes
I opened this
everything?
window again, and it looks like Megan has already left a link very helpfully for me.
Wonderful.
I think that's what it does, but I'm not quite sure. But also, we are halfway through. We should take a 5-minute bathroom break and then come back and jump into the next set of questions. So everyone is back. Jade, did you want to lead us into the next question?
Yeah, so we just finished talking about what we can do to protect our work from being stolen for AI, which was a little bit depressing, but what can we do as authors and creatives to ensure that we are working with human artists and supporting human generated creative material, be it art or writing or business. Anyone want to start with that one? Maybe Jen?
I could start. Although I will say I don't know any techniques except the basic ones like vetting your
We can start there.
Yeah, you know, very basic. Vet your artists, talk to them, get portfolios, get ask for play-by-play of how they're doing the thing for you. You know, I think just asking the questions is a really good basic start that a lot of people don't want to do, but it doesn't hurt you. And
it's really easy to tell if you're talking to a bot.
it can be, yeah. And yeah. And I one time or a while back, I found an artist. I was randomly searching and I found an artist that had the most amazing style. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is so beautiful." I pray to God they're not a robot. So I was like, "I'm going to try." So I DM'd them and just kind of talked and like, "Well, okay, they feel real. Great. So I'm gonna." And they did not require payment up front either, which was a big plus because those AI people, you know. Yeah. So I got some sketches from him and he gave me a play-by-play. He gave me, here's the line art, here's the sketch, here's the line art, here's some of the blocking and the shading, here's the color, here's the color with the shading. And it was perfect. And it all came back to that simple, like, I looked at his pictures, I looked at his website, I looked through his Twitter feed to see that he was communicating with people and not just being body. But I think that's where we need to start. If anyone has more information, please give
Well,
me
that
because
process, that whole thing is part of what I was saying earlier about how like AI eliminates that. So the fact that you can see that process happening
yep,
is a good sign of a human.
absolutely. Yeah.
Alex?
That's very similar to the process that we do with Tenebris Press. And I think that for us as a press, it's super important that we are making sure exactly who are working with on every single level, the writing, the art, the voice acting, which we are branching into all of it. But I also think that those same steps can be applied to any independent press or self-published author, and they should. And it starts with contracts. Absolutely, always everything begins at contracts for your own safety and for the safety of the artist or writer or actor you're working with. Everybody
For
has to
anything
have
you're putting
contracts.
out.
Even if it's free work, have a volunteer contract. Just, I know sometimes it's a pain in the ass. I know it's hard. I also don't always do it perfectly, especially with people that I've known for a long time and trust. But if it's somebody new, especially, always have contracts and be sure that your contract has a two-way non-AI clause. So one that applies to them and says that they cannot be using that technology or limits the way in which they are allowed to use it. Because sometimes in some contexts, it's impossible to just have a blanket no AI because, you know, that can also cover, I don't know, things like pro writing aid or brushes in Photoshop or a million other
Or even
things.
collating of information for a nonfiction.
Exactly. So limiting the use very specifically for them and also for yourself. This has to be a two-way street. It has to be, you know, important that you also make it clear that you are not going to be using that sort of technology. For example, if you are saying this artist cannot give me a piece of AI art for my book cover, I also have to agree to not be adding AI in terms of the text and fonts and, you know, formatting that's going on top of their art. Like, that's only fair. Think about
Yes.
in every sort of context how it goes for both of you and start with the contract and make it very clear what you are and are not okay with. And then part of our contracts is also that process of seeing stages and, you know, shots of the art at various stages. And it doesn't always have to be every single stage. Something as easy as having the initial sketch and you having the right to have input on that sketch, and then having the final art follow that sketch that you agreed on. That's already beyond the capacity of anybody who's using oh gosh, I forgot what that program is called that's doing
Journey something.
Midi
Yeah.
Journey, yeah. Like, that's already beyond their capacity. There is no way that they could produce a sketch first, have you discuss it and change elements, and then produce that specific piece of art. Absolutely out of the
And that's
question.
very important, that developmental level.
Yeah. Absolutely. So just that. And then if you are just licensing art, which is super okay, and we're going to do it too, which means you're just looking at somebody's portfolio for what they already have and saying, oh, I see you've already got this, I could use it for my cover. That's great. Be very wary if all of a sudden their style recently changed from being like very
Or they suddenly
beginner
got really
blocky, and
prolific.
all of a sudden, oh yes, be very careful if it's somebody who's putting out a new one every day. Be very careful if the price doesn't match what you seem to be getting. So like if it's a really complex piece of art with a gorgeous background and multiple characters and details and shading, and it's
The time should
$20,
match the price.
I don't want to say that they have to be expensive because that's not always true.
No, but
There
like
are
the
ways
amount
to
of
get
time that a human
accessible
will put
art.
into something will determine how much they're
Yes.
willing to take for it. And if
Yes.
you see something that generally will cost
Yes.
thousands and someone's trying to sell it to you for tens on the dollar, be
Exactly. And I think
suspicious.
that's the key, trying to sell it to you, because there are contexts in which that's going to happen. Somebody might be willing to donate something for you for a charity project that you're doing that they really believe in, or they might give you for very cheap for any other reason. But there's always that sort of interaction there where you know exactly why they are giving you a discount this time on something that would normally be more expensive. And if you are getting covers for cheap, which is totally valid, you know, you can get great covers for $20, especially pre-mades.
But
But
like you said,
then
know why.
exactly know why, because you are going to somebody who has dabbled in pre-mades for a long time. That's what they do.
They have a
A lot of
library.
times it's a it's a composition of certain elements that are taken from like photographs, from stock photos. They can tell you the source of everything and prove to you
Like
that
graphic
it is
designers.
Creative Commons. Exactly. So there are totally ways, but yeah, just be very careful that the price does indicate that you're getting a specific thing, and know what that thing is.
Yeah, that's all great advice. And I think too, like, you can't always trust this, but I do know that some of my artist friends, and I mean, they're already people I know and trust, but have like actively added to their website FAQs that no, I do not work with AI. I will never use AI. I will never give you an AI produced product. And yes, people lie. You can't always trust that. You should still be cautious, but that is, you know, there's enough awareness of this in the artist
The fact that
community
they
to
put that
start
on there,
looking.
it gives you something to give them accountability for if you find otherwise, for sure.
Exactly.
Because that's almost like a legal disclaimer. You can actually, you know, it goes back to what Alex was saying about contracts, ensuring that you have some kind of legal expectations that are in writing, knowing who's using what, where it comes from, and how much everyone owes the other person for that thing.
Absolutely. Kat, do you have anything to add here?
Well, I'm really lucky because I know a lot of human artists. You know, I have friends who are artists, so you know, I can tap into them. I'm also an artist, so I actually, for my own indie stuff, I'm going to be probably doing my own drawings.
Man, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, well, you know, you haven't seen my drawings yet, but no, I think it's
You haven't
really,
seen mine.
I think it's really, really important to you know, I mean, I liked what Jen said too. Like for people you don't know, you know, you do they sound like they're having a conversation with you? Are you seeing a line drawing? Are you seeing this and that? Like there are certain
You're seeing a process of any kind.
yeah. So I'm all for that. Now, sometimes you know, now I know the publisher I work with, they sometimes use background images from different sources that they've I mean, this is before AI became a thing. They were doing this, right? You pay for these license things.
Yeah, like Getty Images or whatever.
Yeah, I don't remember what it is. Now, Pexels.com, if I was reading that the other day, they do have something on their website that talks about that the art posted there is not supposed to infringe anybody's copyright. So that's just what they say, and it's just something that you could keep double checking just to be on the safe side.
I like when they put stuff up there though, because it gives you something to go back to
Yeah.
if you do end up working with them, because then they've
Yeah.
said somewhere that this is their opinion.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
and
And they're pretty, in the past, I've seen them have like licensed stuff, pretty, I mean, it's pretty well written there, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I haven't heard any horror stories from Pexels. But yeah, like it's just take those steps to make sure that you're working with an actual human. I've had a t-shirt design stolen, and it was really kind of crappy because it was something that I had done when I was feeling like not good mentally. And I'm a bit of a snark monster. So I created a t-shirt called "I'm Staying Alive for Spite." And it's something that really boosted my mental health. And I think I'd written something on Twitter, and someone replied with something about cool t-shirt design. And next thing I know, and I can't even remember how I found this out, but I saw websites that said Kat Gordon staying alive just for spite. And if I remember this correctly, my memory's not great, but if I remember correctly, I think the comment about cool t-shirt was like a trigger for AIs to search on, right? I see Alex nodding. I think that was a thing that was
to
going
see
around,
if you can
wasn't
find a
it?
It's a
t-shirt that
huge
says
thing.
that,
Oh, yeah.
Anytime
I
you
wouldn't be
post on
surprised at all.
Twitter anything that says a cool,
This is how
this
Wish
is a cool
shows me random
t-shirt, this
shit.
is a, yeah, this
Yeah.
is the great t-shirt design. Anytime you use those words on Twitter, you are going to get the bots that
Triggering the bot.
automatically have already uploaded that t-shirt that people can buy instantly.
Yeah.
They
So
do
I
it
had
with
to put a
everything.
disclaimer on my author website saying, places that say that my
I didn't
t-shirt
do
is
this.
that they might not be.
I'm not getting paid for this.
So, shop with care. Yeah. So I didn't even know that was a thing. That was my first kind of exposure to that. I mean, I'm not
I mean,
broken
on
or
the
anything.
flip
I
side,
wasn't
if they
selling
seem to
it,
be
but
selling,
still.
maybe you should stock some.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to cry over it, but that was my first exposure to that. But yeah, do as much as you can possibly do to ensure that you're working with people who have good licensing arrangements and have, and I do believe in contracts too. But yeah, no, I'm just pretty lucky that I know artists and that I can somewhat draw.
I mean, even a contract isn't proof that someone isn't going to try to screw you over. It's just a dissuasion because it can
Yeah,
stand
one
in
extra
legal
step.
ground.
but you could say in good faith that you did everything that you thought you could do in a situation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like we do also need to address the worst case scenario here, which is like it's not great, and this is not a solution I recommend everybody heavily make use of in every instance. But having said that, worst case scenario, you've purchased something and you are now looking at it and you have an inkling, right? And that's happened to many people in our community, to presses, to authors, especially now as we're just learning about all of this technology, right, over the past year. You have an
Developing our
inkling.
own systems for analysis.
And the more people look at these images, I do recommend looking at them often, because the more you look, the more you get the eye. And at some point, you can kind of just instantly tell. But let's say you kind of started to have the eye and you've got this piece of art that was supposed to be on your book and you kind of have a bad feeling, but that person is not going to tell you so. We do have to address that there are tools online to detect, especially in images, whether or not it's likely that they've been created with AI. They are not supposed to be your first line of defense. Like, this is only something we're supposed to be using after we're pretty sure we already know the answer, but we just want one more step of confirmation. The accusation. But together with some of the artists on our Tenebrae server, we did test a bunch of them, and we do know that one of them is pretty reliable, especially if you are cropping out the title or any other added elements to the image. If you just have the image, Hive AI, if you search for Hive AI detection, it has a space where you can insert an image and it will tell you the probability that that was created with one of the standard Midjourney Again, we're
Kind
talking
of like a
about images.
plagiarism checker for pictures.
Exactly like a plagiarism checker. We can already pretty much tell almost always, but if you need that extra confirmation, the reason why I say it shouldn't be an instant thing that we do with every single thing that crosses our path is because all of these AI tools are potentially still feeding things back into the system that you upload into them. So if you're
So you could
already
check it and
almost
then
certain,
cause
yeah,
it
and
to
then it's
be,
gonna
yeah.
be, if
Yeah.
you're already pretty much certain and you just need the extra confirmation, then really all you're feeding it is more AI generated crap.
But don't feed it
But don't
anything
use it,
original.
don't use it for every single thing, and don't use it for things you still want to protect, definitely.
Fair enough.
Well said.
Ooh.
All right, let's move on to our next question, which is what can, or in some instances they already are, publishers do to protect human creativity? And this is sort of connected to the last question, which is, you know, partially about making sure that they're working with human creatives, but also supporting human creativity over AI.
And I mean, this includes people who are self-publishing because you are your own publisher.
Yeah. Anyone want to go first? Jen?
I'll go first. Because this reminded me of all that finagling and gobbledygook we had. It's still, I mean, it's still going on now, but very specifically a couple weeks ago, there was a big hullabaloo about a publisher using AI generated covers, and somebody pointed out to them, and I don't know all the fine details, but it didn't go well. And the publisher decided not to acquiesce their request and whatever. But I think it could have been handled differently from all sides. But I think that's what publishers need to do is they need to hear what people are saying, and they need to be willing to make the changes.
Or discuss the changes at least.
And at least discuss. At least just have the conversation. Like if you're very set in your ways and you're going to do it a certain way, I hope you're ready to defend yourself, because there's a lot of people asking these questions and we're all curious. And I saw that happen, but then I saw some other publishers do it very, very evenly and calmly, and they were fine with it. They made the changes necessary. An author I know closely he didn't realize that his book was author generated on the cover. Oh my gosh, AI generated cover. And so once he realized, he made the change, and it was no big deal. It was just, okay, thanks for letting me know. I'm going to fix this because I want to support human creative people. And I think it seems silly, but it really should just be that simple, where you support the humans. The AI doesn't need your help. The humans do. And humans can do a better job and make it less wacky. And it'll have more feeling and heart to it. I think it really is that easy.
It is, but like I just think that money can push the bottom line in funny ways. People who just want to cut costs wherever possible and lean on these technologies can just screw it up for everybody.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Alex?
I think the number one thing that publishers need to do, aside from contracts and supporting your local organizations that are fighting for legislation, I'm going to probably put these on a t-shirt so that the AI companies can copy that t-shirt and sell it for me.
Yes, do it.
Do it.
Aside from those, the number one thing is do not get mad, do not get defensive, do not make any sort of repercussions on the people who are trying to have this conversation with you, to point out things. Everybody makes mistakes. Oopsing yourself into having an AI cover is something that probably will happen to most of us eventually. It is totally okay. And
especially those of us with very low budgets.
Absolutely. It is totally okay. It happens, and there are ways to handle that. Pre-publication, post-publication, there are always ways. Just do not make people feel afraid to speak to you about it. The moment that people are afraid to speak to you, you've become one of those people who are no longer
Transparency
listening.
is key.
You've become one of those people who are no longer listening, who cannot be approached, who should be feared. And that's a very strange position to be in. And I don't think most people actually want to be in that position. And I've seen this happen too, where a lot of, again, our Discord members, we talk about this, and a lot of people, myself included, have done that uncomfortable thing where we went, hi, excuse me, did you know, because you as a publisher actually happen to have that statement on your website that you don't want to be using, and did you realize that this cover that you just announced happens to be, with mixed results. So I've had the publisher who is probably never going to speak to me again and is just a completely burned bridge. I've had the ones who just went, oh, and fixed the problem, and that's totally okay. One thing that I saw that I really admired was Cosmic Horror Monthly recently had that issue where it's just
saw that
last minute before publication. I think everything had already almost gone to print, or actually
I
gone
felt
to
so
print.
bad. That's so much logistical nightmare.
We pointed that out to them in our Discord because we were in there together, and what they ended up doing was just taking, because of course at the last minute, literally the last minute, you're not going to find another piece of art that's ready to go now.
No.
What they did was just removed the art and had the white page with an anti-AI statement explaining why the page is white. And I thought that was so beautiful and powerful, because if there is nothing else we can do, at the very least, we cannot support that. Right?
Honestly, just be honest.
It's that simple. Absolutely. And people do understand. And there is a ton of leniency for people who, show that they're willing to do something.
And I mean, as this continues, I think publishers are going to start developing policies that understand that that's a possibility, like possibly having multiple backups so that if this happens at the last minute, they can swap in something else,
Absolutely. It takes time to get there
to build those
processes
because you don't
fast.
you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you'll need to do until it happens to you. And then you're like, crap, now we need to write a policy. That's what my company is doing right now. Like my 9-to-5 data company is writing new stuff on the fly every day to deal with new situations.
I was writing contract clauses. I was writing publishing contract clauses. I shouldn't be doing that, but I was doing it.
Here we are.
I'm not going to just find them on the fence somewhere on the side of the road. We have to make this shit up as we go along.
Exactly. And that's the other thing, like with the fact that AI can't be generative, it can just collate. We are always going to be having to generate new policies, new ways to interact with this, new ways to regulate it, new ways to, all of these are going to change as it increases and our interactions have a wider library to draw from of experiences.
Yeah, and I do want to come back to the point about there is forgiveness. Like the reality is we understand, like we're not all art critics over here. Like we're more comfortable with text. It might be easy for us to identify AI generated text, but for a lot of us, that's not true with visual art. And people understand that if you're willing to actually have the conversation.
And part of that is being knowledgeable, being part of an industry, understanding that other people are doing this too, seeing better and worse ways that people respond, and choosing your own.
Yeah, there's a lot of a learning curve involved here for all of us. There are absolutely people who are also art critics who are, in publishing and who have an upper hand here, but most of us do not have that advantage.
There's also the agility factor, like smaller independent and self-published people are going to be able to make a decision, make policy changes, and shift the movement of their career or whatever faster than, say, a massive publishing house like Random House with 18 imprints where they have to go through and do different policies for each one because it's going to look different. They can't just do something blanket. And they have to look at what tools they're using, that because it can go down to like, what is the AI in your team thing that you just use to talk about your projects even.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't think that large publishers are thinking about it in the same way we are. I've heard several horror stories about large publishers trying to shove things into contracts about, yes, we can use your stuff to train AI, because they don't. They clearly don't care about human creativity. If they cared about human creativity, writers would get paid more than 10 cents for every book they sell.
And there wouldn't be an indie market.
Yeah. Kat, do you have anything to add here?
You want to know something? There's my foggy brain. Which question are we on?
We're talking about what publishers can and or are doing to protect human creativity.
That's what I thought. Sorry about that. Well,
sorry for the tangenting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a book that's up for an award tonight. I have to go to an award ceremony at 7.
Congrats.
And but it's an anthology. It's the Nothing Without Us 2 anthology. And we actually had to tick a box to tell them that none of the stories were generated by AI. So that's even happening in the Aurora Awards. So in writing awards,
awards, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I'm noticing calls for submissions now. You have to tick a box saying no AI. It is coming up more in indie author contracts. There is something I want to bring up though. It's just so I have this. I'm part of SF Canada, and again, they love talking about AI stuff because we're all very interested in this. And
have been since the beginning of sci-fi.
Yeah. So what was really fascinating that it was only just yesterday. So I'm going to be on this panel today, but the topic came up about AI detection tools being used in schools to detect, possibly AI
plagiarism?
papers. The problem is that those tools themselves can be quite flawed, and they might flag students who have English as their second language. Yes. Or it might flag the unique ways that sometimes neurodivergent people, tell stories or put information across. So you have to be even careful on that level too. Like, it's almost like there's no area where we cannot be careful.
There's nowhere we can make a blanket statement. Everything has to be flexible.
It's tough. Like, I mean, really, you kind of have to do your best. Like, it's because as we've talked about, there is no hard, fast regulation. So we're all just trying to put things in place to do the best that we can to avoid these things, right? But I think, again, just making those strong statements, if you're an editor, a publisher, whatnot, we are not going to accept, if you're giving writer awards, you have to legally testify that none of what you created was content from AI.
Yeah, we can't have awards incentivizing AI generated material.
No, exactly. Yeah.
We do have. They already exist. We can't have more of them.
Exactly.
To prevent more from happening. But we have already had some instances of that, which was absolutely lovely.
Yeah, I saw something like that just a couple days ago.
You mean a nightmare.
Yeah. One thing that has come up in these conversations before that is important to address is people will respond, okay, people are just going to lie, which is absolutely true. Sometimes you can,
but that's why contracts.
Yeah, you can phrase your contract to the best of your ability, and people will just lie. And then the question is, can you actually prove that they did it after the fact? But I don't. That
depends on the damages.
I don't think that that's a reason not to have the contract at all.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, and this is really pragmatic and brutal, and I'm so sorry for what I'm about to say, but one of the very surefire ways to prove after the fact that somebody has done it is if they publicly confess that they have done it, if they brag about it later, right? So if I have that clause in my contract, I've achieved one of two things, and I'm fine with both of them. Either one, it will prevent this person from using that technology that I don't want to have used, or two, it will prevent them from ever talking about it. If it got past all of my checks, if it got past everything else, at the very least,
they can't
I can guarantee that they will never be able to advertise that they did this. And it will never be used in any metrics to advertise an AI program. Like, if that is the least that I can accomplish, at the very least, that they cannot advertise it. It's still something. It's not perfect, but it's still a reason to have it in there.
Totally agree. Mm. Okay, so how can we encourage governments to regulate AI? And even like how in general, but also how specifically do we want them to do this? What hills do we want to die on? Which hard lines do we want to put down? And why are those specific lines important to protect? Anyone want to start with that one?
I could start, I think. I mean, I'm going to say the least amount, but again, it's if you can affiliate yourselves with organizations that have done things like this in the past. Like I know that, or at least I think I know that the Writers Union of Canada has done quite a bit um, for authors' rights. They if you go to the Writers Union of Canada website, they have a lot of different things that they're interested in. I think even universal income is something too that they're talking about, like in their advocacy goals. I they care very, very, very much about copyright and protecting authors. I think they were also instrumental in the public lending rights that authors get when their books are in Canadian libraries and that. So, if you go to organizations like the Writers Union of Canada or SFWA, and you just read and what they have done and see if they have a history of doing things and kind of being movers and shakers and people who get results. I think that would probably be the best way. And if you see any kind of, I guess, sometimes there's petitions or sometimes there's calls to actions from these groups because they're, so they can present, look, this is what we care about. I really agree with Alex's original point at the beginning of this session about don't try to do it on your own.
And like
That's
I'm an
very, very
introvert, so I
stressful.
totally understand not wanting to go out and do things or being disabled and not feeling like you can. But there are tons of things you can do, just signing things,
Yeah.
joining groups that are part of things that are bigger. Just
Yes, exactly.
things that introverts tend not to do, like jump out, do something, join something, like something, sign something.
Yeah. Well, I'm a massive extrovert. Yes, I'm autistic and an author, and I'm extroverted. So I'm like a magical unicorn.
You really are,
But
Kat.
yeah, like, with people who have limited energies, and I can't walk a picket line, but I could do whatever I can to support, right? And you just find what you can do.
And a lot of
Um,
self-published authors, even like you may not think you have a platform, but at least if you're promoting your own book, that is your platform. You can put things there, you can make your opinions known, and you can gather other people or educate other people. Like if
Yeah.
this is important to you, you can put out a post that people should be looking at it. You don't even have to be specific. You don't have to be highly opinionated. You can just tell people to be aware and do their own research.
Yeah. That's all I have to say.
All right. Jen, any thoughts on this?
She said a lot of what I was going to say was that we can shout into the voids of any social medias or wherever as much as we want. We can have 30,000 followers and do it, and it's great. It's not going to do us a lot if we're just doing it by ourselves. We need to work together. Like that's really the gist of it. We have to do it together, get a louder voice, work our way up the chain, the hierarchy, and get out there that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that is also possible is, there might actually, depending on where you are, be even local politicians who are actually already aware of this and talking about this, and you can, let them know you support them with an email or call after hours, because if you call at like 7 o'clock at night, they just don't pick up and you can just leave a message on their answering machine. You don't actually have to talk to anyone, which is a great tip for introverts.
So true.
And if they aren't talking about it, you can send an email just to say, hey, I would like you to talk about this. And yeah, one email is not going to be a lot, but if you have a local organization or a community that you're part of, you can make that email into a template that other people can send that then
You can
compounds.
start a campaign or a petition if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Like yes, these things do take a bit more energy than just joining something, but there are ways that you can, make your actions available in a way that other people can replicate them.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm like a bunny rabbit hopping up on this topic. So in terms of you as an individual directly impacting your government, I'll be honest, I don't know. For my government right here, I'm not even sure. No, I'm sure there doesn't exist a position right now that is dedicated to this. I don't think they've figured out that this is even happening yet on that level. So it's not like I have some specific person I can call about this. And I doubt that the US has a specific position for this either. Definitely, if you are the kind of person who can call your local politicians, that's super wonderful. But I am also a firm believer in intermediary steps. So how do we reach the government? Well, we reach them by the organizations who already have those channels in place.
Yes.
And while we were with Tenebrous Press, we were researching which organizations we could channel some donations to, and we came up with two. I'm also going to paste them in chat. But as always, when it comes to donations, I say people have to do their own research and find the ones that are right for them. But we came up with the Algorithmic Justice League, which is in the US, and the European Guild of Artificial Intelligence Regulation in the EU. And we found both of these because they are working specifically on legislation. They are diverting funds into lawyers and into class actions and into legislating.
Good place to start.
People have to be transparent about where their AI is trained, and the products have to be labeled and all of that. So I love that. The reason why we research these is, another rung below the ladder. You don't directly have to get involved with these big organizations if that's intimidating, because there are smaller people like us at Tenebrous Press who are sort of being intermediaries for that. So we started a project which is going to be a charity magazine, a special number of this magazine called Thank You for Joining the Algorithm. And we took all the submissions and we're selecting the stories, and we're about to announce, within the next month, our pre-orders and lineup and all of that. And we are going to be donating all of the proceeds from that to these specific two organizations, right? And we're not the only ones who are doing this by far. So if it's easier for you to support somebody like a small press who is diverting funds into these big organizations,
Buy a
because
book.
that doesn't, it means
You're
you can
going
just
to anyway.
it's gorgeous, you're gonna love it. Or even just talk about it, ask us for a free ebook and review it on all of the platforms. Talk about it to your friend, because we will hand out ebooks to anybody who asks, especially if it's for review reasons, but for any reasons really. So just ask us for a copy if you can't afford to buy a book, and talk about it. And you're already promoting a project and maybe reaching other people who are going to be buying it, so we can divert those funds into this. So there's a bunch of levels in which you can get involved. And if your only platform is your 5 friends, but you can get all 5 of those friends to care about something and talk about it, and maybe they can buy a book, that's already absolutely magic, and it is totally enough.
Yeah, I do want to clarify, I don't think any governments really have like a specific person who is like in a specific
They're not ready
position
yet.
to
They're
do this,
gonna.
but I do know
Eventually, they're
that a
gonna.
lot of governments are sort of talking about like the basic introduction of legislation, and it's worth looking into if your local politician is someone who's actively part of that discussion. Because even if they're just part of the discussion and they don't have an official position, like, I mean, it's worth reaching out, but even if you don't reach out, it's just worth knowing, because that can, change your opinion on whether or not they're worth voting for. Like, there are various other issues that are why we vote for certain people, but, that would definitely be a mark in a politician's favor if I saw that they were actively part of this conversation and actively, trying to start more conversations about this legislation and push it forward faster.
I mean, at the heart of it, we're all people who don't know what we're doing, especially when something new comes along. So, like, instead of expecting the government, like, they look to norms to set certain regulations. So, if they see publishers all making sure that awards are not going to AI generated things, if they see all of our contracts having a check mark for this was not AI generated, if they see that this concern stays in the zeitgeist and does not disappear, does not go away, continues to be part of conversations, that's how we force people and legislations and grassroots organizations and higher channels to pay attention by continuing to be active, even in small ways.
Exactly. So we are running out of time. We only have one question left though, so we're doing well. And I think we can rapid fire this question. Just if you know any specific organizations that are actively fighting for regulation of AI, or actively helping people pursue copyright cases or anything like that, please just give them a shout out. If you can share links in the chat as well, that would be great. Alex,
Even
you already mentioned
educational
yours.
resources.
Yeah,
Yeah,
educational
anything else.
resources, anything that is, helping spread awareness or create better precedent where authors and artists are
Anything you want to
protected.
highlight or draw attention to.
Yeah. Alex, you already shared yours, but maybe you can just repeat those for anyone who missed
Absolutely.
it.
So
And
the
for the
best ones
recording.
we've found so far are the Algorithmic Justice League, which pertains to the US, and the European Guild of Artificial Intelligence Regulation, which pertains to the EU. They're the ones that we've found so far. Also, obviously, we do have to give a shout out to all of the writing associations, which are super important, with the caveat of keeping an eye out, because of course also they take their cues from us and they are a little bit behind the curve. So some of their statements so far might be a little bit ambiguous still, maybe a little bit on the wishy-washy side, but it's still better to be there and be aware and, help form those statements for the future.
Awesome. Kat?
You're a muted, Cat.
Sorry,
There you go.
past me actually gave present me a heads up on this. I forgot that I had looked something up on the Writers Union of Canada. And so I posted a link in the chat to a paper they have called Consultation on a Modern Copyright Framework for Artificial Intelligence and the Internet. So that might be handy to look through. I think past me looked at it, but present me can't remember what's in it. But there's a link there. Yeah, so that's my contribution of places to look with people who do things and have had the government's ear in the past.
Awesome. Jen?
I don't have anything to contribute. I'm here to listen to grab what you guys got. I turtle at these moments, like, you hide in your shell because I'm scared. I don't know what to do. So I'm here to learn from you guys about what I can do because I don't do enough as it is.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Jade, do you have anything or should we move into wrap up?
I don't have anything specific, but I will say I have been, like I said, I follow a lot of podcasts, like something like 825, at least 60 of which are writing podcasts. Yes, I'm crazy. I listen at 2.5 speed. Don't mind me. The point is, some interesting ones, the Kobo Life one and a couple other ones had some really interesting further information. And some of those podcasts actually have really great, I love podcasts because they have a notes section. So a lot of times people will take all the points that they have from their podcast episode, or at least the sources, and give you all of those. So check your podcast, just whatever catcher you're using, put in writing or AI or something. I guarantee like there are like 80 plus episodes. And if you can look through them and find ones that pertain to different parts of the market, one's for editing, one's for publishing, one's for indie authors, one's for traditional established, everything you can possibly think of, people have written an episode on it because it's affecting people. And other people have collated even more resources than I can possibly keep in my brain. So I just kind of keep them there, go to the individual sources, and that links me to a lot of research from smarter brains than me.
Yeah, fair enough. It's actually, I haven't looked into it, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out that Kobo is implementing some sort of system, at least to
They have
prevent,
a
uh,
40-minute episode on AI and how it's being used on their platform and stuff. So you can definitely, I don't have the link for it, but they're pretty
yeah,
easy to find. It's Kobo Life. So
yeah. They are actively much more supportive of authors, and I think I've like vaguely heard that they're doing stuff, but yeah, I haven't actually listened to the podcast episode or really looked into it because I have had a terrible summer. Um, it has just been one blow after another. But I do really like Kobo. I think that they do a lot of great stuff for authors generally, so I'm not surprised to hear that they're on the up and up of having this
but like
conversation.
all digital platforms, they definitely don't have enough people to run things or check everything that's on their platform. So,
Yeah.
sometimes they're still using AI elements to do some of that, and there's
Uh,
work to be done.
but it's another good reason I will always encourage writers and readers to pay more attention to Kobo. Kobo is actually a company that, cares about and supports authors, unlike Amazon, and I understand there are benefits to publishing directly from Amazon and buying directly from Amazon, especially if you do have specifically a Kindle device, because it's easier to get stuff from Amazon to your Kindle, but you can put books purchased on Kobo onto any Kindle that was made in the last few years because Kindle switched to using EPUBs, which is what
Sure
Kobo
is
and
a
other things have
formatting.
always been using. You just can't send it directly to your
Yeah.
Kindle from the stores, so you'll have to like grab the file and physically move it onto your Kindle, which is kind of annoying, but it's worth supporting a better company. And uh is everyone okay staying like an extra 5 minutes to answer one final question? Perfect. Because Cameron asked, what specifically would you guys like to see major writing organizations such as the SFWA and HWA do to curb the use of AI in the industry? Like specific actionable
Oh,
steps.
Alex is ready to go on this one. Please.
All
I
right,
can see
Alex,
your
got us
face. Please.
started.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Um, so actionable steps is actually not complicated. I want to see statements that are clear and definitive on their websites, on their awards, especially. If the next year of awards doesn't come with some very serious and clear statements, I'm going to be pissed. I want to see consequences attached to those statements. So I want there to be a clear, this is what's going to happen if books are submitted to awards which will turn out to be AI
And it's not
generated.
like you can
If this,
accidentally submit an AI generated book to an
oh, you
award.
no, that's deliberate. That's always going to be deliberate. So I want consequences. I want people to be banned from submitting for a while,
Yes.
not for eternity, just for
No,
a
but
while.
3 to
I'm a
5 years
reasonable
seems very
person.
reasonable.
Very
That's the amount of time
reasonable.
someone might put into a book.
And we already have some precedents in other fields of people doing this, so it wouldn't even
Absolutely.
be unheard of. I want to see this across all the categories of people that use these associations and organizations. So I want to see this related to writers, but also graphic artists, reviewers, podcasters. Everybody has to be,
AI
involved in this.
generated reviews don't help anyone either. They really don't.
No, no, because next thing we're going to just have AI generated readers and we can just let the AI play with itself while we go and grow
And then they're
mushrooms.
going to tell us we want this in our entertainment and nobody's going to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and this is the hard one that is going to annoy them, but I need them to never again have panels about the beauties of AI without involving a counterpart of people like us who are ready to talk about the other side of it. I want them to no longer
Balanced discussion.
support and endorse publications that clearly and blatantly state that they will be working with AI. yeah, like that is a whole can of worms that is actively happening under our noses that apparently we are unable to stop. And it's a little bit shocking that we've been unable to stop it so far. But yeah, in the situation where somebody decides to release a publication that has AI stories in it, that is their right. We cannot stop them as an individual. They get to do that for now.
But the
And
labeling should be
legislation
clear.
isn't there yet. But yeah, the labeling should definitely be clear. But this organization that represents all of us, there we do have a right to say, no, this isn't okay, because you're not an individual who has your individual right and freedom to do whatever you please in this. Your job is supposed to be to represent all of us. And then when it's something that impacts so many of us negatively, we do have a right to say no. And so far, it hasn't helped much because it's still happening. So I want to see them do better on that.
I
And
feel
I
like
want to see them acknowledge that.
Yeah. I feel like the legislative situation is similar to like when we're not trying to block votes, but we're just going to put in a bunch of stuff like if there's one letter off, then you can't vote because you might not be you. Like it's the insidious little things that we're not regulating that lead to bigger issues that are harder to control.
Yeah, but hey, a lot more of us can join the SFWA now, so we can all join and yell at them.
Which we should, and I will.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have anything to add to this question?
I think Alex said everything good. Yeah,
Covered a lot of ground. Thank you very much,
I want
Alex.
to actually thank Cameron for using the word, the phrase to curb the use of AI, because as I said, AI for accessibility is important. And I'm always going to find the publishing industry ableist until it's not. And so,
but that doesn't mean to demonize tools that can be helpful in certain measures.
I mean, because again, like I live for nuance, right? So nuance in this case would be if you need AI as assistive technology, that's one thing. But AI as generating content without really you participating in it at all.
I think that was one of the best things Alex has said. That line.
Yeah. So
excellent.
So I think that should be clear too. The difference between AI in a form of cheating and AI in a form of assistive tech. And I also agree there should be an actual ban. The problem is I find as a whole, people do kind of craptastic things in publishing, and if they get a slap on the wrist, like that's like huge, right? So we need, let's be grown-ups. Let's hold each other into account.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would even love to be able to go as far as to say, like, in order to join these associations, you have to, at least be willing to check a box saying that you don't use AI. And the way that these applications work is usually not you like submitting your direct work, it's you submitting like your bylines.
Yeah.
So
and portfolios, it's summaries of works and stuff like that.
And as we've discussed, there are also flaws with anti-AI checkers. So like it's not really practical to expect that every single instance would be caught, but at least during the submission process, when you're saying, I would like to sign up, you should also have to check a box or write a line into your email that says, I do not use AI as a generative tool.
Yeah.
I use exclamation points in my daily emails because otherwise people think I'm a robot. But I'm just autistic.
This is another thing that's been pointed out, is that I have seen multiple instances of someone being pinged for using an AI, but it's just that they write very technically correct and with minimal emotion because they're autistic. It's like, yeah, I'm not a robot, thanks, I'm just autistic.
Or even under certain circumstances, like if I'm trying to explain something, I can sound really, really technical, like a manual, but then I can have an emotional breakdown and that goes away.
Without even going into the detection part of it, which is definitely flawed, I think we could still have or demand organizations like the SFWA, HWA to have even without making a statement of what is good or bad, to keep list of, for example, these publications admittedly publish AI by their own admission.
Yeah.
These publications claim they do not use this technology. And it doesn't need to
But
be a bad or good. It's just
yeah.
these are the two lists, and you can be informed about this and decide for yourself whether you
Transparency.
care about whether you care about this topic or not. And this is what's already happening in small communities. We are keeping these lists already. It would just be, transposed to a bigger community. And it wouldn't have to go into detection, which is so complicated for so many reasons, especially on that scale. But even just discussing which ones admittedly do it and claim they don't would already be a good resource for the members to
Absolutely.
have. And that could be something.
I mean, it's really
Absolutely.
similar to like how we did with labeling, like on food.
Exactly. All right. This has been a wonderful conversation. I definitely hope that there will be more conversation around this topic, and might even look into potentially ourselves hosting more conversations about this topic, because I think one of the most important things is that we are actually just discussing it. Having these conversations is the first step.
Yeah.
But we have come to our time, and I do want to respect everyone's time. So if we can just go around and really quickly, you can remind people who you are and where they can find your work online. That would be great. And let's start with Kat.
Yeah, so I am Kat Gordon. I'm an SFF author, a Canadian, disabled, queer, autistic author, and a disability advocacy and literary space advocate in literary spaces, and a double award nominated editor. I don't know if we'll go to win tonight, but I'm very glad to be nominated.
I want to be in
We'll
an
be rooting
award-winning
for you.
anthology.
Well, you're in an award nominated anthology. That's good.
It's the first step.
You can find all the Katness at katgordon.com. That's CAITGORDON.com, and I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect. Jen,
Thank
do you
you.
want to go next?
Sure. I'm Valerie Storm. I also go by Jen. I'm an author. I have 3 books out. My 4th one's coming out soon. I'm with Shadowspark Publishing. I'm mostly on Twitter at Valerie_Storm, and that's where I hang out most of the time,
For
talking,
now,
sharing
until
art.
the ship
Yeah,
sinks the rest of the way.
yeah. I'm
Wait,
also
isn't
on
it
Blue
X now,
Sky.
not Twitter?
Oh, I call it Twitter. Fuck X. Not happening.
Excuse me, as
It's
a
the bird.
do you call the Sky Dome the Rogers Center?
I'm just
Nope.
saying. I know
No.
it never changed my phone because my phone's Apple, so even though it has an X logo, it just still says Twitter.
The URL still says twitter.com. So as far as I'm concerned, it's Twitter, and it will always be Twitter. I'm not calling my social media X because come on, be real, be serious. So no, I'm also on Blue Sky, Valerie Storm. I'm hanging out sometimes. Yeah.
Awesome. Alex?
Yes, I am Alex Woodrow. I'm a writer and I'm the editor-in-chief of Tenebrous Press. And with how volatile social media is lately, I'd say the best place to find us is go to tenebrous.press.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and keep an eye out on the announcement for Thank You for Joining the Algorithm, which is going to go into pre-orders soon, and you can help with that. If you subscribe to our newsletter, which is on Substack, you will see the last newsletter released the cover art for it, which is absolutely gorgeous and 100% human made.
Awesome. And Jade?
Like I said, I'm a writer. I don't have anything published just yet, but you can find all my editorial stuff on eclipsewordsmithing.com. I am still in the process of updating my website, but it should be done by the end of the summer.
Awesome. And I am Diana Gunn. You can find me as Diana L. Gunn on Twitter or Blue Sky. And I also run the Weeknight Writers Group, which is the organization that hosted this conversation. And there are a couple different places to find us. We are on Twitter. We are on Blue Sky. And we also have a Ko-Fi where you can follow us for free, or you can join our membership program for just our base tier is $1.50 a month, and that gives you the ability to vote on future panel topics that we'll have. And we have a whole bunch of goodies there, and you can also just make a one-time donation if you weren't able to pay for today's panel, but you do think it was worth supporting financially. So I'm going to post a link to that, and I'll also post a link to where you can sign up for our email newsletter, because with this current state of social media, yes, we are on Twitter and Blue Sky, but I don't know how reliable that is. Twitter is very unreliable, and Blue Sky is only helpful if you have gotten an invite and you're part of the club. So yeah, I will post those in the chat, and I will let you guys all go. This has been great. I'm gonna keep the window open for a couple of extra minutes so that people can grab the links, but you are all free to go.
Thank you
I
so much.
love talking to all of
Thank
you who
you.
had such wonderful opinions.